biggest thing that I tell my staff is never, ever, ever, because you lose them.
You're not going to collect a credit card over the phone to say, hey, here's for your $50,000 treatment. You got to get them through the door. And listen, guys, Devora just dropped gems on you guys because she knows she gets 300 to 400 new patients a month. That's something that I didn't share up front. This is not somebody who's getting 50 new patients at a location. This is somebody who's getting 300 to 400 in the most competitive market. And she's put in her reps over and over. And even in your big months, you guys do like 600 new patients. Those were some crazy days. Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help you create, convert, and close more new patients so you can grow the way that you want. And today I have a special guest, my friend Devora, who is the COO in a very, very competitive market, one of the most competitive markets in the United States. And she sees over 300 to 400 new patients a month. And she's figured out how to get her cost to acquire a customer down to about $100 and her team converting at 80%, which is insane in their market. You're going to be blown away. She's going to give you the 3 secrets of what she's doing at her office to have these kind of numbers. You're not going to want to miss this. Stay tuned. All right, we are live and I get to talk to Devora, my friend. I've known Devora for many, many years. She is on the East Coast in New York and now also overseas. And I've actually worked with her at multiple different offices. And right now she's the COO. And I asked her to come on today because we track the results with Trackable of all of our clients across the United States. And she's in one of the hardest markets in Manhattan, New York. Tough market. And the results that she gets are absolutely second to none. And I don't say that hyperbolically, I mean that. People would give their right arm to be able to do some of the things that she's been able to do at this practice. And Devora, I just want to jump into this and talk about what you saw last year. And I have this pulled up on Trackable right now, trackable.io. And last year, you guys with SMC, you guys spent $83,000, just a little bit over that. And you had over $1 million of net production, $1.1 million for our audio listeners. And then you still have another 55,000 scheduled out into the future. So it's almost a 14 to 1 ROI, which is crazy. So let's talk a little bit about that. How are you able to do that?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for all your help and support, but your team is really great. We do monthly calls and we go over some of the calls with the staff, things that don't go so right or things that could have been handled better, how we would have done it differently as like a teaching model to the employees. And
so I'll share that rate. So your guys' rate of conversion on all calls, forms, chat, online schedule, virtual consult. I know you have some of those and don't have some of those, but we track all of that. Your total is 78%. So you can kind of see here earlier in the year in January or even in March, we dropped all the way down to 65%, but you've gotten them up all the way up into the 80s and even into the 90s at times, which is really, really good. How have you worked with, you were just explaining it to me, how you kind of listen in on the team and try to help support them. I know we've done some coaching sessions with them as well, but tell me a little bit about your role and how you help them convert at such a great level.
So I have my own office, but I definitely never sit in it unless I have a private meeting. But I sit in the reception bay and listen to, right now we have 5 other employees, listen to what's going on, their phone calls, even sometimes in person. And I'll jump in if there's a patient giving them a hard time or if they're getting frustrated with the person on the phone. And I'll, take over the call, try to turn it around. But if I don't do that, at the end of the phone call with the patient, I'll go over with the employee, what I would have done. I've been doing this for about 15 years. So I'll tell them this is how I would have approached it, especially if they're handling the call on their own. But if I have to jump in, I would still at the end of the phone call go to them and say, this is what I would have done. And it's a teaching model, whether it's a situation they've never dealt with.
Hey, sorry to interrupt the show, but I want to make sure that you're going to Dicoma 2024. It's July 10th through the 12th. And guess what? We are going to be speaking on the main stage and we're going to be hosting a boot camp as well. And we want to give away some free tickets. So how do you win these free tickets? You go to smcnational.com, click the little bar that says enter to win free Dicoma, and then you submit your information and everybody's a winner. We're going to be giving a discount to everybody who enters, and we're going to be giving away some free tickets to the conference itself and to the boot camp. Make sure you sign up for these right away. back to the show.
Or a patient who's being argumentative or...
Yeah, what's pretty cool too is I can kind of see, we can see in here, we can see how each person's doing. So we can see, how each person's performing, how many calls that they've had, are they improving, are they falling back? And that's huge to be able to take your coaching, help them, as well as when we're getting our hands dirty with them, when we're meeting with them and reviewing their calls with them and making sure that they have the tools that they need. That's a huge part of being able to drive up your production, because if you have a leaky bucket there's been times when we've worked together, Devora, where it was like, the marketing's not working and we're looking at the calls and it's like, we're not converting. We got to get this up. And when that goes up, then all of a sudden the production goes up and more patients are coming in. And that's huge. Another thing that I think is amazing that you've been able to do as we work together is your cost to acquire a new patient through the door is $107. That's for marketing patients. That's not all new patients. That is absolutely insane for your market. Nation average is around 350, somewhere in there to acquire a patient. And then when you go to these tougher markets like New York or San Francisco or LA or some of these, more competitive, high dental density areas, it gets even higher. What's been some of the things that's really helped you drive down that cost to acquire a customer?
Well, things like, let's say a patient will call and say like, do you have Medicaid? So instead of answering the questions direct, it doesn't have to be that question, but any question that's kind of a tough question that you don't want to answer, you kind of ask them questions back around it. So you're like, oh, hey, are you a new patient or are you existing? How did you hear about us? What are you looking for? We try not to give prices, but of course, people price shop. So you have to answer their questions and give a range. And also something that we decided to do, which was your recommendation actually, was bring people in for free consultations, limited emergencies, cosmetic consults, just to get them through the door and try to convert them in person. Much easier to convert a patient in person than on the phone. So
it's impossible to convert them on the phone, right? So
when you're trying, impossible, but it's easier in person. For sure. So something which I learned from you, and I've learned a lot of things from you, but one thing I did learn from you, which really helped us in 2023, was stop charging patients or telling them there's a cost to bring them in. Even if they're a patient where we don't take their insurance, just bring them in, see what's going on, and then throw, numbers at them to see. And then, if they like the vibe of the office, the people and the doctors, that's what's going to make them want to pay the out-of-pocket fees. If you tell them a fee over the phone, they're just going to hang up on you, especially in New York.
Especially in New York, yes. So that is one of the biggest obstacles that I see offices put up before their patients is, and the only way that you're going to know if your office is doing this is by listening to all of the calls, because a lot of times the front desk will just put up obstacles and that prevents the patient from coming in. So they want to know how much is a crown, how much are veneers, how much are implants. And you have to have the team trained to be able to open up that funnel to get this kind of ROI. And what happens, and there's a ton of offices listening, because I know right now people are going to watch this and go, 14-1 ROI, that's huge. Like, why am I not getting that? Why am I at 4-1 or 3-1 or 5-1? And the reason why is a lot of times at the front desk, they're putting filters on those patients and you're preventing them from coming in. And that actually drives up that new patient acquisition number up into the 300s, the 400s, the 500s. And then, nobody's happy. So that's been amazing. What would you say? I know you've worked at a lot of different offices and you've actually used our services at multiple different offices. And so what would you say are the main things if someone's listening to this and like, man, I'm not getting the results that I want from my marketing? What would be your advice to them to help start getting results from their marketing?
Well, first is I would look at, the phone calls and what kind of calls you're getting, what kind of insurances are coming through. And like I said, drop the fees, especially just to get them in the door. That's definitely first thing. Second thing is try to, especially if you're an office manager or somebody like, let's say you dedicate one person to marketing. It happens to be me because I like working with you. But I like this aspect of dentistry. It's just like put one person in charge of the marketing. I listen through a lot of the calls myself. I meet with my marketing team, every week or every other week. Stay on top of it. It's not just like, I don't think it's a monthly thing to check in. You really have to stay on top of the calls and the leads, because even if you can't convert them in on the initial phone call, you could try to call them back and get them back in the door. So I'll listen to a bunch of calls. And also the biggest thing that I tell my staff is never, ever, ever put a new patient on hold. Never, ever, because you lose them. So anytime, even if the staff members have patients in front of them that they're checking in or checking out or going over treatment plans, which it's helpful to have multiple people there to answer the phone. So you have to invest in your staff and your practice and the marketing in order to see results. Like you have to. So I have extra staff, especially to answer the phones. But the biggest thing would be really don't put them on hold. Make sure you have somebody dedicated who can give them attention, which is why I always start off with the most important questions. It's, are you a new patient or you're existing? New patients never ever put on hold. Sorry to the existing patients, but never new patients, don't put them on hold. The second thing would be like, I always ask how they heard about our office, just because it's very well relevant to hear, just mostly because if they say online, if I have different deals online, I'll mention those. Like, hey, did you see on our website since you found us online? So mention those. And then if they tell us if they have insurance or not, then you can kind of gauge like where we're going with the fee schedule. And then if they say they have an insurance that we don't accept, definitely offer them a free consult, limited emergency exam, whatever you need to do to get them in the door.
Yeah, getting them in the door, because no one's ever, when I said you can't sell treatment over the phone, like you're not going to collect a credit card over the phone to say, hey, here's for your $50,000 treatment. You got to get them through the door. And listen, guys, Devora just dropped gems on you guys because she knows she gets 300 to 400 new patients a month. That's something that I didn't share up front. This is not somebody who's getting 50 new patients at a location. This is somebody who's getting 300 to 400 in the most competitive market. And she's put in her reps over and over. And even in your big months, you guys do like 600 new patients. Those were some crazy days. But you guys have really optimized and really leveled up around that. What when you say that you, or let me recap this really quickly. So you said, number one, make sure that your fees are in the place to where patients will come in. So when she says that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Devora, you're talking about your cleaning or your exam and x-ray or your consultation, not your other fees. Because I know you guys charge a lot. Like you guys are not a cheap office to get treatment at, right? But you lower your fees on the cleaning, exam and x-ray, and your consultation. Is that right?
Yeah. So the trick really also with a consult is that our specialists do charge more money for consultations versus our GPs. So we don't offer free consults for our specialists, but we'll say, hey, come in, let's have a GP confirm that you need to see the specialist. If they're a referral, that's a different story. It's a little bit harder to convert them, but we always try to just schedule them with a GP and don't charge, because it's much easier for the GP to gain them as a patient for regular checkup and cleanings. But if I'm bringing specialists in, it's harder I have to still pay them. So I always bring them in for a GP to confirm the treatment. And also some people think that they need a root canal and they don't need a root canal. They need an extraction, or, it's not 100%. So I don't want to waste my specialist time that are coming into the practice on limited dates. And I always have a few GPs, 3 at least every single day. So I'll put them in, confirm the treatment, and then we'll say, hey, it costs, let's say $200, $220 to see the specialist, something like that. But we get a lot of emergency phone calls and a lot of Medicaid, and it's a hit or miss. But the truth is that if you can get them in, you get them in. A lot of times they don't show up too, but then you have to follow up. So like I said, it's important to have a dedicated person going through. Like we have Trackable, which is great because you get to see the calls. Then you have to go in and mark off, like, did they actually come in? Did they show up? Things like that. And then I'll print out every month, at the end of the month, a list of patients who broke their appointments. And I'll have one of my receptionists go through and call them all like, hey, you didn't come in. Do you want to still come in? And you can always go back and get them through the door. That's also how to boost numbers. It's important on the original, on the first call, the original call, but you can still win them if they, don't come back.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, but you got to have some kind of system to be able to work through that. I know you guys use Trackable, but most offices don't have any way to even track any of that. And this is huge for you guys because you're going through and you're making sure, okay, my team's trained, I have enough people, you're listening in, we're coaching them as well. But then below that, when the opportunity is missed, when something with the patient doesn't align, you're following back up with those people and capturing those as well. And that's what's driving up your ROI and driving up those new patient numbers. Well, Devora, as always, this is so good. Golden. I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing this with us. It means a lot to me. And I know people are going to learn from it and get better from it.
Of course.
Thanks so much.